All right, Nico, can you say, welcome to another episode of Healthy Births, Happy Babies?
It's a happy episode. Happy babies.
Welcome back to another episode of Healthy Births, Happy Babies. I'm Dr. Jay Warren. I'm the prenatal and pediatric chiropractor here at the Cap Wellness Center. And this podcast is all about helping you have a proactively healthy pregnancy so you can have a safe, gentle, natural birth. And that's going to allow you to bring your baby into the world that much more gently and healthily so you can start off your family experience more powerfully than if it's full of stress and trauma and other health concerns. So if you are a fan of this show and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Wherever you listen to your podcast, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an upcoming episode. And also, if you haven't rated or reviewed the podcast and you've enjoyed it and gotten value of it, that will really help me out because that'll allow this podcast to reach more and more parents like yourself that might be missing out on this type of information and helping them along their parenting journey. So thank you in advance for that. And thank you if you already have rated and reviewed. Today on the podcast, I have Tracy Gillett back with us. She was on the podcast a number of months ago talking about her book, The Art of Natural Parenting. It's a book I found over a year ago, and it really helped me as a parent, so I wanted to bring her on, and I was happy that she came to share the principles that she teaches in her book. And if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to it. It's really a good one. I got such great feedback that I wanted to bring her back again to talk about some specifics. And today we're going to be talking about temper tantrums and understanding not only what they are, but like what your kid's going through during that time, so we can, as parents, instead of trying to micromanage and control behavior, which is a seemingly endless job, to go a step beyond and in a bigger perspective, and in those troubling times, help them navigate and become more self-regulating. And that is going to allow them, as they grow and mature, to handle those problems that they're having now as a 2 and 3-year-old later on in life, and help them to be that much more resilient. And I think that's something we all want for our kids. So before we switch over to her conversation, I'm going to take a quick message, and then we'll get right to it. Hi, it's Dr. J, and I am so excited to announce to you that my new online program is now available. It's called Connecting with Baby During Pregnancy, and what it's going to do is going to teach you methods proven by the latest research in pre- and perinatal psychology and epigenetics that are going to allow you to have not only a calmer and more relaxed pregnancy and to have a gentler, more natural birth, but on the other side of things, you're going to feel more confident as a mom, and you're going to be able to soothe your baby that much easier, because when you're able to bond with baby and connect right now during your pregnancy, it's only going to translate on the other side to just being that much more connected and be able to help them calm and soothe. It's a really important thing. So head on over to drj.warren.com/CWB, that's Connecting with Baby, and you can learn all about it. Tracy Gillett is a passionate writer, mother, global nomad, and natural parenting advocate. She's also the author of the book, The Art of Natural Parenting, which is available through her website, Raised Good. It's a heart-driven platform to provide parents with sound, well-thought-out, scientifically backed advice. She hopes to rouse your natural instincts so you can parent your way by offering support and community free from judgment. She's originally from Australia, and Tracy now lives in Vancouver, BC with her husband and a young son. So with that, let me switch over to my conversation with Tracy. Hi, Tracy. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Jay. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad we got to connect again. It's been I think it was a number of months ago. It was our podcast number 84 where we were talking about your book, The Lost Art of Natural Parenting, and it was a big hit. It was really well received. People had a lot of questions, so I'm really happy to have you back so we can talk more about what you were shared there and go a little deeper.
Oh, that's great to hear.
Yeah, their book is great. I mean, as if you've listened to her episode already, you know that I'm a big fan of the book. It really helped me as a dad, and that's why I wanted to bring her on. But there's been a lot of articles you've been putting out lately that I read all the time. I'm on your list, and I love it. But really looking at I get a lot of questions either in my practice or, from listeners about what about these like temper tantrums? What am I supposed to do? Like, it's driving me crazy. And this episode, like what we're going to be talking about isn't necessarily techniques of like, oh, do this, do that, but a new way of looking at it. And I love your grounded way of looking at just these little beings are having challenges and let's support them through it. And you go through that in a number of different scenarios, different phases of life in your book. But today I think we'll talk about those kind of, outbursts and tantrums and struggles, challenges. And that leads me into tell us about, your path. I had read your bio there, of course, but, what's evolving as far as like the book, and your Facebook group is very active, of raisegood.com. Like, tell us what's been going on since we talked lately.
Sure. So, thank you for all that, Jay. It's encouraging to hear that it was so well received, and really appreciate your support. And just the gentle parenting community in general, I feel is just so incredibly supportive, and there's a real camaraderie to try to help parents so that we can give our kids what they really need. And that's really what I'm trying to do with Raise Good. Is just, I'm not a psychologist, not an expert, but just sharing my experiences and what I've found has really helped me through my parenting journey and through parenting our 4, almost 5-year-old son, and how it's just helped shape me as a person. And that I think that if we really lean in, we can just grow so much more as people ourselves and become better people as our kids are our best teachers. Through over the last probably, I guess, 6 months, just been really promoting my book as much as I can, and just trying to look into how to support the community of followers that I've got as best I can. So we started a closed Facebook group a couple of months ago, and it's about 2,500 parents, I guess, in there at the moment. And I started that just to try to connect parents that follow Raise Good, because a lot of parents were emailing me and asking questions and support, and I just felt that it would be great if parents were connected to each other, because if one person's asking the question, then there's so many more that probably have the exact same question. So it's become an extremely supportive community. I have a group of admin who are helping me with it, a group of mums who help, and we just monitor the comments and make sure that everything stays respectful, but we very rarely have any problems. The group is just so supportive of one another, and parents can ask about if they've got sleep issues or problems with how do they discipline their child, or health related questions and things like that. So it's been a really great addition to what I'm doing at Raise Good.
Yeah, it's a really active group too. I'm a part of it, and it's great because sometimes there's groups that are formed that basically people just kind of go in and they observe, and I'm definitely guilty of that sometimes. But this group, like, once a question's posed, like, people are really supportive and offering great ideas. And I know it's helped me in the same way of, okay, I never really thought of that question before, but that's probably going to happen at some point. So what's the advice there? And again, knowing it's coming from peers, from other parents, not like necessarily from an authority, but if somebody's got a 6-year-old and they're dealing with things, they're much more an authority than I am, because I have a 4-year-old, right? I haven't gotten to the 6-year-old stage yet. Yeah. So it's really, really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I found it extremely supportive from my own point of view. And a lot of the time it's just other parents saying, yep, that's normal, and it will pass, and how can we find other ways to help support that parent so that they can get the rest or the support that they need, because parenting isn't easy. Right. And often it's just parents knowing that they're not alone. because it is so tough sometimes just to know that you're not doing anything wrong, because we're often told by society or by doctors or by other people that the choices we're making are setting up bad habits and stuff like that, which most of the time they're not. So it's good to hear that from other parents and to know that that things will work out.
Right, and there are those times where you as a parent just instinctually feel for your family or yourself or for your kiddo to do one thing, but then in the back of our heads there's all those, the mainstream saying, no, you should be doing it this way, or they're going to get used to that forever, or whatever it might be, and that conflict, we find ourselves like being isolated in that because you think, okay, well, I'm doing it wrong because everybody else is doing it that way. And then once you start talking about it, you realize, all right, everybody's doing it. Not everybody, but more people are doing it the way that you're instinctively doing it rather than the mainstream. And having that support makes a huge difference. And especially with, what we're going to be talking about with, temper tantrums or whatever you want to call them, the terrible twos and all these terms get thrown out of kind of putting our kids in these little boxes of that it's a problem. I mean, it is a problem in the moment and that it's not fun and it's not easy, but thinking that they're doing something wrong or you're doing something wrong is something that your work has really helped. So like, what's your take on when a kiddo is having a really difficult time and outbursts and a tantrum? Like, what's going on for them in your opinion?
Well, I think there's a few things. I think firstly that the language that we choose is really important. And I know that there are words out there like temper tantrums, three-nagers, terrible twos, putting these labels on children. And I think that can be really counterproductive, just from it just, you hear that word and you think that they're doing something to us, they're throwing a tantrum, but in reality they're not trying to give us a hard time, they're having a hard time. Yeah. And we're the parent, we're the grown-up, and we've got 30, maybe 40 years more experience on this planet than they do, and it's really our job to guide them, rather than try to control somebody else's behavior, because it's impossible to do that anyway. And I know mainstream discipline techniques that's what they're aimed at, is at controlling behavior, but behavior is so superficial, and really what we should be trying to teach our children is to develop emotional intelligence and to understand how to regulate their emotions and to not be scared of their emotions. And I think that's part of the problem with so many parents, is that we weren't necessarily taught how to deal with our emotions, and that's why our children trigger us so easily. And that's what they're sent to do, I believe. And if we can face those triggers rather than running away from them and trying to dampen our children's behavior, because that's the easier thing to do, if we can be strong and face our own demons, then we'll become better people ourselves, and then we'll be able to help our kids. From the point of view specifically of tantrums, the tantrums are, that's nature's way of letting a child release their stress hormones. They develop over the day or maybe over the hour, stress or frustrations or feelings that they don't even know the names for. They might have only just started to learn how to talk and barely know how to put a sentence together, let alone label an emotion. And they build up over time, and having a tantrum is their release, and it releases cortisol and it releases adrenaline, and it helps to reset them. And it's a good thing for a child to be doing. It's a good thing for a child to be crying. It's a good thing for a child to have a tantrum. And while it can be extremely, I don't know if the word's frustrating, but it can be difficult for parents to deal with. That's the time where we learn who we are as parents, and it's like if you're playing a game of basketball and the other team is ahead. You don't get upset about it, you fight back, and that's when you learn how strong. It's the same with parenting. When our children are crying in the middle of the night, or when they're having a difficult moment, that's where we really learn who we are as parents. And I think sort of treating it as like almost a training ground, they're teaching us how to be stronger parents that they're going to need in the future. If we think that we can get out of toddler tantrums, we're sorely mistaken, because these children of ours are going to turn into teenagers at some point, and they're going to need us again then. So I think really leaning in and listening to our children and hearing what's going on and helping and guiding them through their emotions and not taking it personally. It's nothing to do with us. It's not that we're a failure as a parent. Trying to block out what other people might think. It's not embarrassing. It's completely normal. And you might have to, if you're in a public situation, that might be your challenge, is to sit there with your child and to feel embarrassment if that's what you feel. But your child is more important than what a stranger thinks or what an unsupportive family member thinks. So yeah, that's sort of my overall kind of thinking about tantrums, is that they're not something to try to avoid or to try to stop children having. They're there to tell us that our kids are having a problem, and that we really need to help guide them through that rather than try to dampen it down. We had some issues last year with our son, and I went and saw a counsellor, and he's 4 now. And one of the first questions she asked me was, how often is he crying? And I said, maybe twice a week. And she said, yeah, that's not enough. I want him to cry. I want him to cry every day. I was like, are you serious? You're telling me you want me to help him cry more? And yes, that's exactly what she wanted. And I'm reading a fantastic book at the moment, Rest, Grow, Play, by Deborah McNamara, and have also read Gordon Newfield's book before that, which is sort of the teachings that Rest, Grow, Play is based off as well. And what we realized with my son was that he was stopping himself getting to his tears. He was moving to frustration and anger, but rather than getting to his tears, and what he really needed was to cry. But those emotions were scary for him, and he wasn't wanting to go there. So it was really trying to help him stay in that moment and to get to those tears. And the more he cried, the happier he was. And it can be counterintuitive in our society, but it's really important.
And was he, if you don't mind me asking, was he skipping over the crying because he felt, say, embarrassed for crying, and it was easier for him to be frustrated, or was it not really all that logical, and that just there was a step missed?
Yeah, I don't know if it was embarrassment. He just seemed to be skipping over it. I think it was more fear.
Okay.
But it's hard to not ask a 4-year-old leading questions.
Right.
Were you scared of that, buddy? Yes, Mum. But he'll say yes, to whatever I say, and it's hard for him to. He'll just say words like, "Oh, I felt bad." He's just too young to be able to explain it fully, and right. Sometimes we don't even understand our own emotions, do we?
Exactly.
So, but it's really hard. But the more you can let those tantrums come out, then I think the less you're going to have to deal with them, because if you keep blocking them, they'll keep coming.
Right.
And and you often know, your child starts to show signs of that there's something wrong, and then you think you fixed it, and then an hour later, then it all comes out, or before bedtime, it all comes out when they're looking to reconnect. And it's unavoidable, but it's finding a way that the parent is able to cope with it as best as possible and help the kids through it.
Right, and it's looking at the bigger picture of things, right? Like in the controlling behaviors, it tends to be like a micromanaging of like dinner time or getting ready for bed, or all these like little procedural things that is endless, and there's no way you can create protocols for every single thing that goes on there, instead of looking at the bigger picture of emotionally being able to self-regulate, and whatever comes up then is more easily able to be processed through, so that it doesn't get in the wrinkle of like whatever procedure, whether it's getting to school or coming home from school or brushing teeth or whatever it is. I think that's really important, because you can get lost in the minutia of all the little things and directing behaviors, and it's so depleting when you get caught in that, because it never ends, right?
Yeah.
And I think another thing you said that's really important is not taking it personally when those things happen. I know me as a parent, there's those times where either one, I'm taking it personally of like, oh, you're defying me. And that word comes up in my brain. I'm like, that's really interesting. Like, he's defying me. That's a little dramatic for not eating your broccoli, you know?
Yeah.
But then also taking it personally, like, oh gosh, I'm not leading him well enough, or I haven't taught him that and he hasn't got it. And we too went through a phase with Nico. He's 4 as well. A couple months ago, where he was just going through a really tough time. It was a growth spurt and the holidays and all kinds of things were going on, and it was just a really challenging time. And it wasn't a matter of like teaching him anything as far as what he was doing. It was just allowing him to just kind of navigate it. And then he had this huge jump in language and cognitive stuff, and like folds in his brain were being formed. And of course he was feeling uncomfortable in his body and in his person, and he needed help. But it was over and over and over again. I looked to my friends and other people with kids too, to say to not feel alone in it. And that and then I actually just did a podcast episode about phases, and this too shall pass. And when you're in it, you think it's never going to change, and like, oh, I really screwed up and it's going to be like this forever. But if you can support them through things, then it actually is processed through, and you can go to the next level, rather than it being like just stuffing it down and recreating it over and over and over again.
Oh, big time. And the mantra, this too shall pass, like it does. You think in the moment, you think when it's the third night in a row and it's taken 2 hours to get to bed and it's demanding another game, like, I just want you to go to sleep.
Right.
Like, I want my time.
Yes.
Like, it's and you can see the end in sight, and you're just like trying to squeeze that last ounce of patience that you've got, so that you don't blow up, because then they'll blow up and then the whole thing, you start again.
Right.
But it's finding that, and I think it's looking at things like tantrums, like, it's, for me, it's sort of the invisible work that counts the most. It's not and no one around you is going to recognize it. You want to be seen to be doing something proactive, like putting them in a timeout, or threatening to take something away, or even praise, or these sorts of things. But they're so short-sighted, and they're just aimed to try to change the behavior. But it can make parents feel better, because it makes the other grown-ups around you see that you're in charge, or that you're in control. But that's a complete illusion.
Right.
But doing things like just your kids having a hard time, like when Tom was having a hard time last year, it was just simplifying was the answer. It was getting outside more. It was looking at our week and paring back our schedules. It was giving us more time for those transition periods, starting to get ready for bed earlier, looking at even the parent getting more time to go and do something to give themselves their own self-care, so that they have more patience when these things go wrong. Getting help, I've recently started getting HelloFresh 3 times a week, so that we don't have to think about what meals to cook.
Nice.
Looking at things that you can help nourish your family, so that you can give your child what you need, instead of trying to reduce your child's needs, because you can't reduce your child's needs. They need what they need, and whether you fulfill them or not, they're still going to have those needs, but they'll just look somewhere else to have those filled, or they'll start to believe that they can't have these feelings, or that it's too scary to have these feelings, and that's going to have an impact on them for the rest of their life. And it's not to say that no parent is perfect, and we all need to support each other in our choices. But I think the most important thing is just to realize that, parenting, it's not a set of strategies. It's not a set of rules. We've just got a relationship with these people, with these kids of ours. It's just a relationship. That's all it is. And, we never ask, what kind of relationship do you have with your husband or your wife? What kind of, are you an authoritarian husband or an attachment, husband? Like, it would be ridiculous. We would never think to try to, if my husband has a go at me or forgets to do something, I wouldn't say, right, I'm taking away your phone now. Like, it's just, it would end in divorce. Like, that would just be so disrespectful. And I think it's just treating these little people with respect and realizing that they're doing their best with the level of brain development that they're at. It takes decades for the brain to develop. It's, not until their mid to late 20s that our brains are developed and that they've got the capacities that we've got, and they simply don't have the abilities to do some of the things that we'd like them to do. They're not miniature adults. They're unique little beings, and we just need to help them along.
Right, and that guiding process is so important, especially you had mentioned this about, say like the 2-year-olds versus the teenagers, but there's that aspect too of, if we can be seen as guides in a safe place to help nurture them through and support them through as a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old with the problems they're having at that point, I think that's so important, because when they're teens, they're going to have huge problems or much bigger problems that we want them coming to us for help with, rather than feeling unsafe going to mom or dad with a certain issue that came up in class or with a peer set or something that happened after school. Like, that's what I want for my son, is to know that he can come to me with anything and be have a safe place to work through it in a relationship, as you said, rather than, oh man, dad's gonna flip if he hears this, I better figure this out on my own, because he's learned from me that I flip on seemingly smaller things now, or seemingly big things now, because him throwing Rice Krispies all over the floor seemed like a big deal, but it's not compared to what a teenager might be bringing home.
Yeah, absolutely, big time. And you want them to be able to know that you can handle those, that you can handle those big emotions, and that they've got to be able to, they say that we're the external regulators for our kids, and that's our job.
Right.
That's our job, is to help them, and we also don't want to turn them into little people who say yes to, whatever they're told to do by an adult, do we? It's we might, as parents of toddlers or preschoolers or young kids, be frustrated that they just won't follow instructions. But when they're teenagers, do we want them to just be following their peer group? Do we want them to just be following, what other people tell them to do? I certainly don't. I want my son to be making his own decisions and to be forging his own path and to be a leader, not a follower. But we treat little kids as if they should just be followers, and then they flip a magic switch when they're teenagers and they can suddenly say no to things. It doesn't really work that way. We have to have our end game in sight and start, parenting or having the relationship that is going to support that person in the future, not just what we want in the short-term moment.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of what we were just talking about is encapsulated really well in the article you just published. I was reading it just this week, getting ready for our interview, Why Mainstream Parenting Techniques Risk Breaking Our Children's Spirits, and that speaks exactly to what you just mentioned. I'll put the link in the show notes so all of you listening can read that, and I'll obviously put links to your book as well if you haven't already picked it up. It's really helped me. So Tracy, I want to thank you for that, and thank you again for being here to share that wisdom that will ground us as parents, and hopefully be in the back of our mind the next time we all as a family are going through a challenge, not just the kiddo, but all of us going through a challenge, and remember some of these important things. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Hi, it's Dr. J again, and I want to thank you so much for listening to the podcast. It's something I really enjoy doing, and I, as a parent, learn a ton from these experts coming on and sharing their wisdom, so I hope you're getting a lot out of it too. And I want to share something else with you. I've created a guide called the 40 Ways to Connect with Your Baby During Pregnancy. It's full of simple things you can do on a day-to-day basis that will help strengthen that bond that you have with your baby. It's a free download. You can go to my website at drjwarren.com/40ways and just enter your email. I'll send it right to you. You can download it and start working on it right away. All of the research that I'm learning in the fields of epigenetics and attachment parenting is showing that the more bonded you are during your pregnancy with your baby, the better the birth is going to go and the better parenting is going to go, because you have that strong foundation, a strong connection to build upon. So go again to my website. It's drjwarren.com/40ways and get that free guide. And again, thanks for listening.